Senate Chair and members of the Senate Committee of the Judiciary. I am Michaela Jeffers from the Patients' Rights Action Fund, and I'm here to testify in opposition to 320, the bill to legalize assisted suicide. The Patients' Rights Action Fund is a national, secular, nonpartisan organization which has successfully fought the legalization of assisted suicide laws through coalition work in the states. We oppose 320 because it's poor public policy. It puts our most vulnerable at risk of death through unintended consequences of mistakes, coercion, and abuse. In fact, 320 would allow for lethal injection by its definition of self-administration, which is different from the present Oregon bill. Some of the worst threats of the legalization of this legislation, were brought home to us by our past president, JJ Hanson, who was a Marine Corps veteran and volunteer firefighter, diagnosed with a very aggressive form of brain cancer in 2014 at the age of 33. He lived 3.5 years past his prognosis and personally experienced the very powerful emotions and fears, of course, that come with the changes wrought by a terminal diagnosis. Rather than accept his 4-month prognosis, he and his wife, Chris, fought endlessly for whatever medical treatment was most appropriate. And that kind of goes to the point that determining whether or not a patient will die within 6 months is fraught with error. A major study of physician prognoses in Chicago revealed that of 468 predictions, only 20% were accurate in predicting when death would occur. In another study, quote, no group accurately predicted the length of patient survival more than 50% of the time. Will we make lethal drugs accessible based on a prediction? And to JJ's deeper point, proponents will often say that passing the law is a simple matter of expanding choice. Continuing the fight was JJ's choice is something they often say. But we think this is a very hollow defense. He experienced how the utter vulnerability of a terminally ill patient opens that person up to the implicit pressure that the suicide option pushes on them. He told his wife, Chris, months after it happened, that there was a period of time where if the pills had been on his desk, he would have taken them. And to everyone else, he seemed to be doing incredibly well, given the circumstances. The lethal drug option preys on fear, and patients need better care than that. And there are so many options for them. JJ passed away at the age of 36 in December 2017. Not only does the availability of lethal drugs diminish hope for the vulnerable patients and so exert a subtle pressure to choose assisted suicide, it also tangibly takes away their medical choice. This law would deprive our most vulnerable, the terminally ill, elderly, those with disabilities, and the disadvantaged of choice and autonomy due to the fact that they're making end-of-life decisions in a profit-driven healthcare system that's designed to cut costs. If assisted suicide is legalized and a lethal dose of drugs becomes a legitimate medical treatment, insurance companies would be perversely incentivized to offer a less expensive lethal dose of drugs rather than treatment. And to this point, there are documented cases of this happening, with the example of Barbara Wagner and Randy Stroop, who were both denied payments for chemotherapy and offered payments for lethal drugs in the state of Oregon. Stephanie Packer was denied payment for a life-saving treatment, and when asked, was told by her California insurance company that they would cover the copay for the assisted suicide drugs. And there are the patients of Dr. Callister, who were both denied a payment for life-saving treatment and offered payment for lethal drugs by insurance companies in Oregon and California, even though he himself had requested the treatments and there was a high likelihood that they would be successful. This doesn't leave the most vulnerable among us with more options, it leaves them with the cheapest, deadliest one. We ask you to vote no on 320, reject the bill because suicide is not real medical treatment, and our families deserve more than that. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions.